Welcome in another week, 4th and 1 Michigan recruiting here on WXYZ.com. Brad Galli alongside ESPN's Tom VanHaaren. We're getting classy, my man.
We are. We look good.
Got some coats on. We've added a helmet last week. Michigan, not exactly the best effort against Akron, but our focus is recruiting. Each week, we give you 4 downs worth of insight and material on Michigan recruits. Tom provides his access as the head Big Ten recruiting expert on ESPN. Someone we haven't talked about in our first 2 weeks, a quarterback coming to Michigan next year, Wilton Speight. I look at tape of him and I see a Ryan Mallett type of quarterback. What do you see? What does Michigan see in him?
Well, he's getting them closer, just like Shane Morris is, to the pro-style offense that they want. He's a bigger guy. He's a taller guy, much like Ryan Mallett. He's pretty accurate. He actually works with Steve Clarkson, a quarterback guru out of California. So he works hard on his craft. He hones his craft out. He flies all the way from Virginia to California to work with him. He's definitely a good prospect, and the dynamic is interesting because there was so much hype around Shane Morris that the hype, I don't want to say it's not there around Wilton, but I think there's less attention on him, which to me might be a good thing for him to come in a little bit under the radar.
When you look at that controversy for quarterbacks that may arise someday, who do you think we'd be talking about years from now between Speight and Morris?
Man, you're
putting you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot. Yeah. I think both prospects are very good quarterbacks. I think they both bring a lot to the table. When you look at these two guys, I know the fans are, like I said, they're focusing a lot on Shane Morris. I think Wilton Speight needs to be in that conversation down the road of guys that could be big contributors. Right now, he's got, through 3 games, he's got 12 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's got over 800 yards passing, and he's got a lot of what Michigan wants. So I don't know. I can't predict the future per se, but I think Wilton Speight has to be in that conversation.
I'll let you off the hook with that. That was a decent enough answer that I'll let you slide. Second down, someone we've talked about on each of our first 2 episodes, DaShawn Hand, visited Michigan. We talked about that visit last week, the impact that it had on his recruiting trail. But the Washington Post has been following him. They posted a video last week about that visit at Michigan with a little bit of access. Pretty cool just to see, a first-person point of view, at least, on camera. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting, and it's a guy that you don't get a lot of access to, and you're getting that look. It wasn't a lot, but it was a good look at the atmosphere, the game atmosphere, what he kind of saw and what he went through, and then also a little bit afterwards, it was almost an instant reaction of what he saw. So I thought it's been pretty cool. It's been a good look into the process, and him walking around the hallways saying what's up to everybody, all his friends, and even sitting at the cafeteria table. A girl, I made note on Twitter that a girl at his school got more out of DaShawn Hand than any reporter has by saying, "Do you know where you're leaning yet?" And he said he thinks he does. So it's been interesting to follow that.
Which is also interesting because the timeline a little unclear, but that came soon after the Michigan visit. He said he loved the environment. How can you not? It was the biggest crowd ever, and kind of just smiled, looked at the camera, and laughed a little bit. When you look at what's next for him, he's got 2 visits scheduled up next. He said he's going to make his decision off those visits.
Yep.
Give me the timeline of what is next for him.
Well, that's an interesting question and look into his thought process, because he's going to be going out to Florida October 5th and then Alabama November 8th. So he has a month in between every single visit. And I find that pretty interesting, that he's got plenty of time to kind of settle in and think things through and really digest what he saw. And then he's going to make his decision after the Alabama visit on November 14th. So, yeah, that kind of gives you a look at what kind of kid he is, how cerebral he is, that he really wants to take everything into consideration and look at all the aspects of each school.
Like you said before here and on Twitter and on your writings on ESPN.com, you still think Michigan is the front runner, no matter how those visits go.
Well, no matter how those visits go.
Okay, at least right now.
For now.
Okay.
Absolutely. And weirder things have happened. The Florida visit to me is pretty intriguing because he's never been there before.
Oh.
Yeah, I talked to him before, and he said everything that he knows right now about Florida is just from what he's heard. So who knows what can happen on that kind of visit. I think it's a disadvantage for the Gators because the relationships that he's built with the Michigan coaching staff, he doesn't have that yet with Florida. But who knows? You never know what could happen on a visit, especially in the SEC. He could go down there and they could wow him. They could impress him enough that maybe he decides for Florida. But I think for right now, I do think Michigan, and I do think with all that being said, I think it's going to be really, really hard to beat Michigan in the end.
Vital down, third down in any football game, just making the parallel right now to the vital class of 2015. You pointed this out to me when we were discussing what to talk about on today's show amidst so many different topics. There's a very small number of scholarships to be handed out in that 2015 class. Why? And with that, how important are the players that they pick up in that class?
Yeah, the numbers are a big aspect of what the fans like to look at. How many guys can each class bring in? And it's interesting to look at. 2013 was one of Brady Hoke's first full classes. 2012 was the first. Because of attrition, because a lot of guys left, the 2010 class, if you go back and look at that class, it's amazing how many prospects that signed with Michigan in that class aren't on the roster now. A lot of holes were left. So the 2013 class, there was 27 commitments. They signed 27 guys in that class. And if you look at a full roster of 85 scholarships available, 27 are taken up by just that one class, those guys that are freshmen right now. Yeah, it's a huge chunk. So 2014 is going to be small, 2015 is going to be small, and the importance of that class, the 2015 class, as you said, it's vital for Michigan to hit on every single spot that they fill. If you don't have a lot of guys that you can take in that class, you need to make sure you're getting the right kind of guys. And I think what the fans generally look at is they like to look at the stars and the highly ranked guys, which is, that's normal and that's okay, but a lot of this is about evaluation. It's not just about the stars. You need to fill a roster and you need to fill your team for what fits best. So Michigan's being a little bit picky right now with offers. Not a lot have gone out, but I think it has to do with they need to hit the right guys. They need to evaluate. They need time to evaluate and then go after the guys they think fit best.
Can't get better insight than that right there. When you look at Saturday night coming up here, this will be our fourth down. We talked all about that night environment at Notre Dame being on the prime time docket, if you will, for the Michigan-Notre Dame game. Another prime time game coming up against UConn. How much can that do for a recruiting standpoint? It's likely going to be a blowout, especially coming off that effort against Akron. How much can that do for someone watching at home who's maybe hemming and hawing between Michigan and another school?
Yeah, it's not going to do a ton.
Okay.
Recruits always say that one game either way, it's not going to do a lot for them. If Michigan comes out and struggles, I think you're going to see, from the media at least, you're going to start to see some negative articles, some negative things pop up. Now, I think that can potentially affect recruits if they start to hear a lot in the media, what's going on in Ann Arbor. But like you said, if it is a blowout, if they do bounce back, which I think is very likely that happens, it's just going to get them back on track to what they had been doing. Everybody's going to say, okay, Michigan's back. They're back on track, and I think everything's going to kind of even out. So, one game like that, especially, no offense to UConn, but against a team like UConn, whether it's prime time or not, it's really not going to affect a recruit's decision too much.
Let's get into our extra point here, which is always about a current freshman on the roster. I won't exactly put you on the spot and make a prediction about this week's game, but like we just said, if it turns out to be a blowout, a lot of those younger guys are going to get on the field for the first time, especially in a road environment, to get on the field. Any other of these freshmen that talk about immediate impact of being on the field, does this kind of environment, match up to that, their expectations maybe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting with the Akron game. I think they would have liked to have that ability to be able to play those guys, even though it was at home. I think they would have liked to have been able to get more freshmen involved. So on the road, for sure. And we mentioned primetime game. There's a lot of pressure with those kind of kids, the younger guys, knowing they're on TV at night. Everybody's watching, even though the opponent is UConn. There's definitely some positives that can come about getting those guys on the field, on the road. A little bit different environment than walking out of that tunnel, slapping the MGO Blue banner and knowing everybody's behind you. Everybody's rooting against you in that atmosphere. So that could be big for down the road, for games down the road. Once they get into the Big Ten schedule, this could definitely be a positive to get those guys involved.
Tom VanHaaren, you can read his stuff on ESPN's recruiting page all over ESPN.com. You can find him on Twitter at TomVH. As always, he's right here with us on WXYZ.com every Tuesday morning. Tom, as always, man, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.